नमस्कार, मैं हूं आशुतोष पाठक। जैसा कि हमने आपसे वायदा किया था कि आज सीधे कनाडा चलेंगे, डॉक्टर मार्क कील से आपको रूबरू कराएंगे। लेकिन उसके पहले हम आज आपको बता दें कि हमने ये इंटरव्यू क्यों चुना है। हम अपने ऐसे दर्शकों को अ, बताना चाहते हैं जो बहुत ही एग्रेसिव हैं हमारे दर्शक, और हमको अक्सर वो मैसेजेस भेजते रहते हैं कि पूरी दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है। एक तो मैं अपने उन दर्शकों के प्रति आभार प्रकट करता हूं जो मुझे अ, बहुत सारे कंटेंट भेजते हैं कि पूरी दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है, क्या चल रहा है, गेट्स ने क्या किया, एलन मस्क ने क्या किया, कोरोना के बारे में क्या चल रहा है। सबके बारे में मुझे जानकारी मिलती रहती है, और मेरा जो टेलीग्राम चैनल है उसमें तो बहुत जबरदस्त वो इन्फॉर्म करते रहते हैं। कभी कभी उसमें कुछ अनवांटेड मैसेजेस भी आते हैं, तो उन्हें मुझे डिलीट करना पड़ता है। तो उसके लिए आप मुझे माफ करें। मैं आप सबसे आग्रह कर रहा हूं कि फेसबुक पे, ट्विटर पे, यूट्यूब पे और टेलीग्राम पे आप हमें फॉलो भी करें, क्योंकि हम प्रतिदिन आपके लिए कुछ न कुछ विशेष लाने की कोशिश करते हैं। आज डॉक्टर मार्क कील से आपकी मुलाकात करवा रहे हैं। डॉक्टर मार्क कील पब्लिक हेल्थ पॉलिसी के एक्सपर्ट हैं, कनाडा में रहते हैं और पिछले 2 साल से बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं पब्लिक हेल्थ पॉलिसीज में। इनकी अपनी कंपनी है कील एंड एसोसिएट्स, जो पब्लिक हेल्थ पॉलिसी को डील करती है। 20 साल पहले ये कनाडा की सरकार में सर्विस करते थे। उसके बाद उन्होंने सर्विस छोड़ दी और आजकल ये अपनी बड़ी कंपनी चलाते हैं। इनका क्या रिएक्शन है ट्रकर्स मूवमेंट पे, ट्रकर्स कन्वॉय पे, फ्रीडम मूवमेंट में, कोरोना वायरस के मामले में, ये क्या इनकी प्रतिक्रिया है, आप गौर से सुनिए। मैं इनसे वो सारे सवाल करने जा रहा हूं जो शायद इन्हें अनकंफर्टेबल भी करे, लेकिन आपके लिए ये जरूरी है। आपको ये जानना जरूरी है कि दुनिया क्या सोच रही है कोरोना वायरस के बारे में। इस सब पर हम आपको अब सीधे लिए चलते हैं कनाडा। टोरंटो से जुड़ रहे हैं हमारे डॉक्टर मार्क कील। सो वेरी वार्म वेलकम टू डॉक्टर मार्क कील।
It's wonderful to see you, ASHUTOSH.
Dr. Keel, I believe that you are live from Toronto.
I am.
Yeah, so you are looking very handsome. So let me let me congratulate you.
Well, so do you. There you go.
So what is the weather there?
Today,
Is it all fine?
it is. It's a beautiful spring day. The sun is shining. It's about 14 degrees. I wish all your viewers were here to enjoy this beautiful day.
Yeah, I am live from Delhi. This is the national capital of India.
Yes, I've been
And
there.
today we are feeling a little relaxed because temperature gone down. Yesterday, we felt some beautiful weather. So today here, little as far as uh, weather is concerned, we are really little relaxed. So now, Dr. Mark, I have just briefed my viewers that I am going to ask you some uncomfortable question.
Sure.
And I am sure that you will enjoy my question. So my first question is why I am asking you, because I feel that the Canada has shown us the path. And to some extent, I admire those at least who raise their voice in a time where we were all thinking that what we should do. So can you please tell our viewers, Dr. Mark, that what you think about coronavirus? What is your wisdom says?
Well, look, we're in the middle of a sort of on the downward trend of a pandemic. The last time we had a pandemic was over 100 years ago. I will say that, as a consequence of the pandemic, the Spanish flu in the early part of the 20th century in 1919, around there, we really didn't have a firm handle on how to deal with this. So public health, as a consequence, sort of rose to international standards to manage that public health issue back in 1919. Over the subsequent decades and decades and decades, I think we've had an opportunity to see some really interesting viruses sort of wield their ugly heads. We had SARS, we had H1N1, we had Ebola, and then in the early parts of 2020, we had the coronavirus. Now, look, ASHUTOSH, the coronavirus has been around for a long time. It became epidemic when the infection rates became larger and larger and greater, largely because the world is very transient. So I think the world really reacted quite responsibly at the outset through the World Health Organization and governments in every country in the world to say we've got to nip this in the bud or stop this or stem this by doing a number of things. And the number of things that I think the governments and the World Health Organization did was put in place good policies and procedures to stem the tide of infections. And some of the things that we did was restrict movement of people. We looked at early treatment for the infections and vaccinations. They're very important to have done that. And I think I'll say countries like yours, countries like the UK and others, they might have started slow, but I think they've done a terrific job in managing the massive amounts of the potential for infections by the result of the policies that they put in place.
Doctor, in fact, in India, we completely disagree with the ongoing process here in India. And 2 days back, we got a great judgment from Supreme Court of India that the Supreme Court of India said that you cannot force vaccine on any individual. And Government of India and the private hospitals, private practitioners, everyone has to reveal the data. Everyone has to reveal the data of adverse event. I'm just giving you a reference why I'm going to ask you, since you said about WHO, do you think any foul play in coronavirus episode? Because we lost complete trust in WHO. And we mean it. We are saying with all conviction and with all responsibility. We can give you n number of evidences. I'm just giving you one example.
Sure.
In 2000, Gates Foundation came in existence. And after that, H1N1, Ebola, flu, influenza, SARS, everything is coming out.
Yes.
Don't you think any foul play? Do you think it is emerging like a natural phenomena?
Well, look, I mean, science will tell you that if the infection rates are as prevalent as they were, you have to act, and you have to act very fast. Look, I'm not going to be an apologist, nor am I going to be an advocate for the WHO or for governments. We do a lot of work in healthcare and health public policy. So I could tell you even from the right at the outset, there were a number of governments that I would have said did this wrong right from the start. But I wouldn't characterize the pandemic as a conspiracy. I think that's probably a little over the top, with great respect. But I will say this: that there's a lot to be left. There's a lot to be done, and there's a lot left to be desired in terms of how governments responded to this. I've been public about this too. I've said this many times. I think that governments did, in a lot of ways, they didn't operate as effectively as they could have. And I think to capture a little more of your point, I think public health kind of maybe walked themselves into a bit of a a swamp based on how, in one instance they would say one thing and they'd walk that back and then they would say something else. So there was a lot of confusion that happened as a consequence of going through.
Doctor, we can't be naive. You must be aware of the fact that more than 80% research funding nowadays coming out from Gates Foundation. You are talking about science. What science says, what Fauci says, what Gates Foundation says, what WHO says, that is considered science nowadays.
Well, look, I mean, in my country, I can tell you very specifically, we're not saying that the Gates Foundation is the be all and end all for offering up advice to governments and to public health agencies. We have a science roundtable with experts on it who believe right at the outset that science is the rationale for a lot of the decisions that needed to be made. It's not Bill Gates. I'm in agreement with you, but look, I'm not going to be one of those who would be of the opinion that Bill Gates is perpetrating a conspiracy. That's just not something that is really, in my opinion, something that's
I'm not saying that he is doing conspiracy. I'm not at all saying. I'm just saying that it cannot be coincidence, doctor. It can't be coincidence, doctor. What you say, you are saying that your public health policy experts are doing round-the-clock meetings and they are doing research every day, every now and then. But what happened when truckers' convoy movement started? Why it happened?
Well, there's a fundamental difference between people's right to voice an opinion and fact-based evidence as to how we manage through this. And if you're talking about the truckers' convoy that took place here a little while ago in Canada, I thought it was a pretty decent show of democracy for sure. But I've been public in my country to say that there were three things that I think we should have done. There's the Prime Minister made some comments at the outset of that were probably inflammatory, but he should have demonstrated a little bit of concern. That was the first point that I think, concern that people have been in a restricted state for 2 years. That's crazy. And then I think he should have said, here's what we're doing in terms of action, in terms of policies, and even a change in some of the things that made people angry because they were restricted. But third, and this is what I've said too in public, there's a perspective here. And the perspective is that the truckers' convoy isn't 100% of Canadians. It was a small group of people who took it upon themselves to come to our nation's capital and to voice concern about the lockdowns and the mandates.
No, I'm not saying anything. Truckers' convoys, the movement, and why they raised, and it is a matter of democracy. You have all the right to raise your voice. No, it is not. I am asking question. Why Canadian government imposed so many restrictions? On what basis? Who were taking call?
So look again.
Where science was completely compromised?
Well,
Who were the people?
Yeah, I don't agree that science was compromised. I think we've got a very well-developed national public health agency. We have public health offices in every province in this country, and every municipality in Canada has a public health office. So each of the provinces were given the opportunity to I'll just say to load up on what they called science roundtables with people who are experts in this area, and they provided advice to governments, and governments were then given the opportunity to accept that advice and to move forward with implementing them or not. And in some cases, they didn't. We had in 2020, we went through a lockdown that lasted almost 5 or 6 months. And then it opened up a bit, and we saw that infection rates went up again, and that prompted the Science Roundtable to look with the help of organizations like Pfizer and Moderna and others to put in place a vaccine mandate. and
Doctor, why I'm saying that science was completely compromised. All the tech giants and all the so-called mainstream media suppressed the other voices, other scientific voices. How come you say that only Fauci is science?
Well, look, I'm not going to apologize for some of the actions that that governments had taken, but I will say this: if and this has happened before, not just because of this pandemic, I think invariably what the World Health Organization and governments internationally wanted to do was to contain the counterfactual opportunities to lose sight of the fact that the best way to deal with the pandemic was to get everybody vaccinated. So that was the focus. And look, you made a comment at the outset that said that some people should have the right not to get the vaccine, and I agree with that.
And then why, when somebody was asking about vaccine mandate and lockdown, they said that they are fringe elements. Scientists from Harvard, scientists from well-known universities, they were called fringe element.
Yeah,
and
I think you're right, and I think that's unfortunate. I know several of those physicians who are being marginalized or even canceled in some way by virtue of their opposition to the mainstream public health mandates on things like restrictions and vaccines. Dr. Peter McCullough I know very well, and I think it's terrible what's happened to him. And I think others like Dr. McCullough have been sort of given.
Dr. Jayant Bhattacharya.
Exactly. Yeah, been given short shrift.
And the renowned virologist Sucharit Bhakri.
Yeah. So look, I think it's important.
No, I'm giving you 3 examples, doctor. Why I'm saying you the science was compromised.
Right.
Why they pushed only vaccine agenda.
Well, I think
why they were not thinking about treatment protocol.
Well, they are thinking of treatment protocol. The treatment protocol is to get herd immunity, and herd immunity could be done by the fastest way possible with a vaccine. Now, look, again, I'm not going to be an apologist.
Have you ever seen that during the pandemic, was there any mass rollout of vaccine in the history?
You mean, was there anything like what happened now in the past?
Yeah.
Yes, there has been, and your country is a good example of that. If it hadn't
during pandemic,
no, you're asking the question about has this ever happened before? And in your country, if it hadn't been for vaccines for polio, we would never have fixed that problem in your country. So I think when we look at vaccines, again, I don't see a problem where we would look at an annual vaccine for the flu. Why is everybody a little bit exercised when we're talking about a vaccine for the coronavirus or for COVID-19? Again, it was the fastest and the probably the most implementable process, because not everybody could react the same way through other kinds of early treatment options. So this is, I think
Are you aware of the fact that is there any study you gone through that the natural immunity is better than vaccinated immunity?
Look, to get natural immunity, I hear what you're saying. You could, but natural immunity is, we can't expect that 80% of the population would be naturally immune based on drinking fruit juices or having vitamin D. But at the same time, we had huge numbers of people in hospitals all over the world in ICUs who had respiratory compromises based on this COVID-19 virus. So we had to do something. I lost my brother because of COVID. He was not vaccinated. Had he been vaccinated, I think he would have weathered that storm.
I don't know what is the situation in Canada and America, doctor, but can you tell us that one vaccine is effective for all the variants? One is from Wuhan variant, then the Delta variant, then the Omicron variant. Do you think that the same vaccine is effective for all the variants?
The answer to your question is no, it's not, and we know that already.
Yeah.
And you're seeing an evolution of next generation for this, based on Omicron, based on Delta, based on others. But you're seeing, as a result of the initial vaccination, a very stark diminution of ICU patients. You're seeing, although infections might be on the increase, the wear and tear of the infection on your body is lessened by virtue of the fact that people have been vaccinated with either 2 doses or a booster as well. So, for the vast majority of those who have been vaccinated, I think we've seen a marked increase in public health costs as a result of hospitalizations or ICUs, and that's a good sign.
Do you think, doctor, that one vaccine is effective for Canada, one vaccine is effective for America, and the same vaccine is effective for England, and the same vaccine is effective for India?
Well, we don't.
Don't you consider any health ecological system?
Well, I know exactly
why. Or environment?
Yeah, I know exactly why you're asking that question, and frankly, I agree with you that not every jurisdiction has the same acuity levels. But we do know that the World Health Organization had agreed that there would be a number of vaccines by different companies that would be approved, and every country approved either Pfizer's or Moderna's or Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Sputnik, Sinovac. So there are a number that were approved, including.
Have you ever experienced 30 kind of vaccines earlier in your lifespan, doctor?
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
Have you ever experienced, doctor, nowadays we are having 30 kind of 26 number of vaccine. So these kinds of vaccines, have you ever seen earlier in the human history?
Well, I think
there are scientists are saying that we never experienced.
Well, I think you're seeing, that we're having to live as human beings with, an increase in virology, and I think that's, that's something that, and I've said this in public too. This pandemic will become endemic, and we just have to deal with this. But we deal on an annual basis with a flu. We deal, with needing a shingles vaccine. We need, there's still an opportunity to be vaccinated for other viruses that are out there. So I don't think we're going to see that decrease. But I think I understand why you're asking that question, because there are other options, and I agree with you. I think we should be looking at other options and promoting those other options too, whether it's including natural or otherwise.
Doctor, I think that you must be aware of the fact that the WHO changed the definition of pandemic.
Yes. Yes.
What you think about the changing of definition of pandemic?
Look, I want your viewers to understand one thing. The WHO is a political organization.
Oh, great.
Okay, it's a
that I wanted to listen from you.
Okay, yeah. And it's a political organization. Secondly, yes. The declaration of a pandemic is also political. So I think it's very clear to me, and
it's a breaking news, doctor. It is a breaking news for all of us that you're saying with all conviction and responsibility and accountability that WHO is a political organization. For my Indian viewers, I am just repeating in Hindi. डॉक्टर मार्क कील कह रहे हैं कि WHO इज नो मोर ए हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, इट इज कंप्लीटली ए पॉलिटिकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। और अभी तो बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस हैं, आप हमारे साथ बने रहिए, हमारी मजबूरी है कि आई हैव टू आस्क हिम क्वेश्चंस इन हिंदी, और मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि आप जरूर सुनेंगे। डॉक्टर कील कह रहे हैं कि WHO इज ए पॉलिटिकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, एंड जो जो कोरोना पेंडेमिक था वो भी पॉलिटिकल डिसीजन था। दैट इज द बिगेस्ट न्यूज। हम अपने दर्शकों को यह बताना चाहते हैं कि डॉक्टर मार्क कील कह रहे हैं कि WHO एक पॉलिटिकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, और जो पेंडेमिक था वो भी एक पॉलिटिकल डिसीजन था। दिस इज द ब्रेकिंग न्यूज फ्रॉम डॉक्टर मार्क। यस, डॉक्टर मार्क, I
Well,
have stopped you. Please go ahead.
well, I don't want you to put words in my mouth. What I am saying too is that decisions that are made by the WHO and by governments are not made in isolation, and they're not made because they're political in nature. They're given advice, and the advice that they get is largely based on science roundtables and advisors who are expert in science and clinical understanding. I want you to understand that. But at the same time, I could recommend to a government to do thus and such, but they might say, well, politically, that's not palatable. And we've seen that.
Doctor, you are scared of WHO?
No, I'm not afraid of the WHO. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I believe, and I belong to an organization called Doctors for the World, one of the things that I believe we need to do is to work with them. We're looking at some international summits to make declarations to help the World Health Organization in its future dealings on things that could be the next generation of either a pandemic
unless Tedros is not replaced, how would you work with them? Is he a doctor? Is he a scientist? He's a political personality.
Right. But look, at the end of the day, he's the mouthpiece for the WHO. The whole idea is every country on planet Earth has signed on to the tenets of working within a construct called the World Health Organization.
That is not a Bible.
Well, it's not a Bible, but I'm just saying it.
If more than 180 countries signed some agreement,
right,
that can be changed.
Well, sure. That's what, but it's not going to be done unilaterally. And I'm not, I like you believe that, I have a voice, I have a considered opinion, and I say that very clearly to you. It's considered. So it's not counterfactual. It's not an opinion that I just picked up from the ground. I think it's really important that your viewers understand that. And I'll use this as an example because we say this in North America: you can't fight City Hall, and people govern people. And so we have to work with organizations like the WHO to make sure that they understand that there are other options out there. And we want to be very clear, very fact-based, and very, for all lack of a better word, very reserved about how we move forward with those kinds of with that kind of advice, and I'm prepared to do that.
Doctor, I don't think that how much you have much more confidence in you that you will work with WHO and you will convince WHO. What happened in Canada? Canada government has to impose emergency for those voices who were raising some important voice.
Yeah,
scientific voices.
Well, again, that was a political decision, and I think we're in the middle.
You are unable to answer.
No, I'll answer it this way. We're in the middle of an inquiry right now based on when the government initiated its Emergency Measures Act. I think what it needed to the entire episode for that truckers convoy exposed weaknesses in our police structure. It exposed weaknesses in how our political facilities are protected. So you're not investigating the mandates strategy. Oh, sure.
Which truckers were asking. You
Well,
are just investigating the police failure and the administrative failure.
well, they look, for all intents and purposes, a truckers convoy occupied an area outside our federal parliament for close to a month. That's craziness. But at the end of the day, I'm not disparaging that. I thought that was a very interesting way to express your displeasure to what was happening. But at the end of the
So
day,
you don't believe in their demand?
no, here's what I wanted people to understand, or your viewers to understand. Canada initiated restrictions because we saw an increase in infections. We wanted to make sure that people who were transient across Canada, particularly those that were driving a truck, would come into our country. And in order for them to come into this country, they must be vaccinated. But at the end of the
Doctor, you are saying that Canadian government was making restrictions because of the increasing infection.
yes,
But here we have Barrington Declaration, which completely criticized the lockdown policy. When this infection is public domain, what the epidemiologists are saying, when it is in community, infection is if existing in community, you can't stop them by
right.
imposing the restrictions, by imposing lockdowns.
Well, I think we're learning that. I mean, one of the key learnings from this is that restrictions, and we're seeing that right now. We're seeing that in China, that restrictions have a huge impact. We're seeing in Canada right now that, and I'm going to go on a limb. This is probably another news flash for you, that there will be challenges to our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms on the compromising of those charter rights to Canadians based on a mandate. If we're told you must be vaccinated and you choose not to be vaccinated, you can't have your rights quashed as a result of that. All of these questions are going to come out in years to come.
Now, my second question is, Doctor, why I asked you that science was completely compromised. Look at the situation of child vaccination. Not in India, almost 80 or 75% population got infected, and they came out from the infection. Now, there is a debate going on after vaccination, what happened. And even after vaccination, we received Omicron infection, and almost more than 85%. So there is a question going on in the field of political or in healthcare field, that vaccine has not stopped infection. So there is a great question mark on efficacy of vaccine. But in kids' case or child's case, I think that even in Canada, what is the situation in Canada? What is the death in child's population?
Well, look, it's very, very clear here epidemiologically that fatalities for the virus, including the Delta and the COVID-19 and Omicron, was a cohort over the age of 55. They were So I hear where you're coming from, and again, I also hear where you're coming from in terms of do we impose mandates for those under the age of 12? My point is, if you're a parent and you don't want your child to be vaccinated, then you should have the right not to have your child vaccinated. And I've made that point publicly too. But again, I don't want you to think that science has been compromised here. Our Canadian Department of Health made it very clear that it was safe to vaccinate children under the age of 12. Now, they wouldn't have done that unless science weighed out that, in fact, it was okay to do that. You're not giving the same amount of a vaccine to a child under the age of 12 or under the age of 6. So there are a whole host of titrations and those kinds of issues that happen as a consequence of the decisions that are made to vaccinate those under the age of 12.
Doctor, here in India, and what I saw, international compromised news outlet, they were doing a news like that in the month of October, November, that the next wave is for childs, and all the pediatricians were appearing on television screen, and they were saying that there is an urgent need for child vaccination, and we should enforce it. We should mandate it. They were saying like that, but nothing happened.
Well,
December gone, January gone, February gone, March gone, April gone. Nothing happened.
Yeah. So, I'll just give you this as an example in my country. To go to school here at an elementary school level or at an age that's elementary school related, you must be vaccinated against a number of issues: measles, mumps, diphtheria, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, you're not eligible to attend school. So those mandates, they happen for other things. I'm just a little bit concerned that we've taken this whole issue with COVID-19 because of a global mandate and global restrictions and made it this bugaboo or this terrible thing. What
about mask, doctor?
Look, a mask mandate again. Like I think masks work, but that's just me. I've worked in a hospital all my life and my professional life, and wearing a mask is part of that because it makes sure that infection rates are lowered substantially. But if a public sector entity wants to have a mask mandate, that's their right to do that. But if you choose not to wear a mask and go to a restaurant where people are wearing masks, you may not be eligible to enter that restaurant.
The government should pass their advisory. Government should issue their advisory, but here in India, you can't believe, doctor, that government earned crores of money.
What, for the manufacture of masks?
No, not manufacturers. Manufacturers are earning in thousands of crores, but police collected the money as fine.
Right. Well, I don't know that. I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Now, why I'm saying you that we lost all kind of trust, because these government agencies were quoting WHO guidelines,
right?
And on the basis of WHO guidelines, they were just imposing fines on those who were not unmasked, who were unmasked.
Right.
That's why I'm asking you. The role of WHO is completely dubious during whole 2 years. Well, now let me ask you, Doc. Yeah, please.
I'm not gonna agree that to that choice of word, but I'll go back to my point. It's a political organization, and the sooner that the world understands it's a political organization, the better we'll understand the reason why decisions are made like they are.
But why, doctor, you are so diplomatic?
I'm not being
about WHO.
I'm not being diplomatic. I'm not being diplomatic. I'm being realistic. We have to work with organizations like the WHO. It's not going away. You can't say we're going to have this other faction so that we can fight the WHO. No, that's folly. I think to work with them is the best way to do that.
What is the role of World Bank, doctor?
Which is the
role of World Bank? We have some certain information that what the World Bank did in 2018 regarding RT-PCR kit. That's why I'm asking you, doctor.
Well, look, I'm not qualified to make an opinion about the World Bank and what it does. You know, I I understand health, and I stick to my lane.
You understand,
Sure, I understand.
but you are not willing to cross your limit.
But again, you're asking me to you know to give you an opinion based on something that I know very little about.
No, it is available on the World Bank website.
I understand.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you. I said you in the beginning of the interview that I will ask you some uncomfortable question.
Yeah. Well,
And
just
I'm
yeah.
extremely sorry that I'm asking you. You're a very
No,
decent fellow.
well, don't use me as the apologist for either the World Bank or the World Health Organization, because I'm not.
Don't you find any role of, I'm putting some word, it would be little harsh, like Anglo-American mafia, Anglo-Canadian mafia, Anglo-French mafia. Am I wrong?
Well, your choice of words are a little provocative. We'll use it. That we'll use that. But look, again, um, organizations like the United Nations, like the World Health Organization, are there because the members of that organization are elected officials. That's a club.
It's a club.
It's a club. You have to be in the club to be in a part of that and to help manufacture the decisions. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a voice as the people. And that's what I think you're suggesting. We need to be a little smarter on how we deal with those with whom we elect. I go back to my point that I said earlier on. People govern people. We elect.
Great doctor. Great doctor. That's your master stroke, I believe. Now I'm coming to you on political issues.
Sure.
How you look at the political masters all across world. I feel personally, and here in India, like me, lakhs of people feel that world lacks nowadays a good leadership, statesman-like leadership. Do you agree?
I totally agree with you. I fundamentally agree that in as much as I made the point to you about the truckers' convoys and what it exposed in Ottawa, the weaknesses of police, etc. What the pandemic has done is exposed the unbelievably poor leadership that we've seen politically globally. And so I think it behooves, as I said, and if there's one message that I would give to your viewers is that people govern people and democracy matters. If you've got 1.4 billion people who say, I don't want this to happen, and one person that's running this, I can't see that one person is going to say, I'm going to stand fast and push back. It's not going to happen. The same thing in countries where there are vibrant democracies. As long as people are fact-based and not emotional, and making sure that they work within the construct or the system, I think changes could happen. And I'm hopeful that maybe we look at better people that would seek to be in public office. Right now, you're right, it's a club, and we get the same churn over and over again. And it's sorry to say this, it's just not working.
So do you believe inwardly that a handful set of people completely destroyed the very ethics of democracy during last 2 years?
Well, I don't know if they destroyed it, but I think there have been decisions that have been made that have been pretty ominous.
Virtually it is being destroyed, I believe, because everywhere we saw mandates, illogical mandates, restrictions.
Well, look, those are opinions. ASHUTOSH. So, when you say that they've destroyed because of a mandate, I'm not certain that. I think what we've seen is that, when good science recommendations were put forward and they were ignored, well, that's not good. And so I look at leaders who actually compromised, good practice for what they thought was good capital P politics, and that's where we have a problem.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marc Kealey. I think that I am highly delighted that you expressed and you answered almost all uncomfortable questions. By my mind, I believe that I asked you all uncomfortable questions and you expressed in a very polite manner. So I am highly delighted to
Great.
have you on my show. And Doctor, in the last session of this interview, you just mentioned the Doctors Federation of World. What is this?
So it's an organization. It's a not-for-profit organization founded by Dr. Fanny Casallo of Italy. We have tens of thousands of physicians, allied healthcare professionals, academics, legal scholars who have come together to look at really, for all intents and purposes, three areas of concern. One is on how this pandemic looks to, in future, to help communities at risk. That's number one. Number two, we look at the establishment of good clinical practice guidelines that could come to bear globally, and that's something that we think would help the World Health Organization. And number three, that we look at good government policies and initiatives, health related and science, with a number of issues that are evidence-backed to help the world run through the kinds of things that would happen so that we can avoid the pitfalls that we saw in this pandemic. So Doctors Federation for the World, it's global. We have every continent on planet Earth participating in our initiative. We're having a summit in Brazil in September. And we're looking forward to having a number of delegates, both in person and virtually, to help us deal with those issues. And then there'll be a declaration at the end that we think will have international prominence and would certainly help organizations like the WHO and governments throughout the world.
Dr. WHO, and I think that the whole world completely ignored so many therapies, so many pathies like naturopathy, Ayurveda, and homeopathy. We practice in India, and all three are very effective. So, what is your opinion about this?
Well,
now, World Health Organization or any organization and countries from all across the world, they should consider these pathies?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because one of the pillars that I didn't mention that will be part of this is integrative and alternative.
Integrated.
Yeah, integrative. Yes, and alternative therapies. We look at, we're going to see things like long COVID, and long COVID could be managed by by other therapies. And so, if you look at some of the therapies that have been talked about, like chlorine dioxide or even vitamin D, or for other homeopathic or traditional Chinese medicine, herbal remedies, et cetera, I think those are things that we need to have a rich discussion about. To leave them off the table or to silence that is not good health. And so I think that there are a number of people, especially those in the science sector, epidemiologists, clinicians, et cetera, who are going to come together to talk about that. So it'd be worthwhile for you as a journalist to look at what those what the resolutions would be from that summit and how they'll have applicability worldwide.
India is having 1,000 years of legacy of naturopathy. How you look at it, doctor?
Oh, I think that India has a fantastic track record for alternative and natural healthcare opportunities. I mean, not only is it things like products, but it's also what you do for your the mind, the mental state, the whole issue about where India really does showcase to the world its prowess in that, I think it's great.
Thank you, Doctor. I believe that being a person of public health policy, and you have been dealing with public health policies, so I believe that you would certainly push this alternative integrated therapies
Very much
for
so.
the rest of the
Very much so. And we have good colleagues
yeah.
all over the world. Good colleagues all over the world who are in this. So I'm just delighted that India, some of your clinicians and some alternative health experts will be coming to our summit from India as well. It'd be worthwhile to talk to them.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's been a great experience that I asked almost which I wanted to ask you all the questions. So thank you very much. You spared your precious time with us.
That's my pleasure.
And we are obliged that once again we shall be on air whenever I think that, and if you will give me time,
Anytime.
I will. Anytime. Okay. So thank you very much, Doctor.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. आप सबका बहुत